Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, an in-depth look at the weapon systems that have come to define the war in Ukraine. From Turkish drones to British anti-tank weapons, we look at the hardware being used in battle. Also, the VA unveils a gargantuan infrastructure plan, with dozens of medical centers possibly closing or being fully reconstructed. Find out what's in the $2 trillion proposal. And the German government commits to buying a fleet of new fighters. Find out how many it plans to purchase. It's all that and more, with the latest news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon. This is Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. We've got a full show for you this week, so let's dive right in. The Veterans Administration has released a colossal new proposal to rebuild or reconstruct huge swaths of its hospital and care center network. Capitol Hill Bureau Chief Leo Shane outlines the $2 trillion infrastructure plan.
Leo, the Department of Veterans Affairs is asking for $2 trillion for infrastructure in the coming years. Tell me about that plan.
Yeah, look, these are recommendations that came from the Secretary of Veterans Affairs as part of the Asset and Infrastructure Review Commission. This is sort of like BRAC for VA, base closing round, except in this case, they're talking about what the department's footprint will be across America for the next 30 years. And what they've proposed are really radical changes, things that will affect almost every state in the country. They're talking about closing down 17 major VA medical centers in 12 states, talking about building 14 more in other locations, talking about completely rebuilding 18 others on top of that. And that's before you get into some of these community clinics and smaller venues. Hundreds of facilities could be changed here. And as you said, the total price tag on all this would be about $2 trillion, just a mind-boggling amount. But VA officials are saying that's compared to about $1.8 trillion in what it would be just to maintain the current facilities. So this is actually about $90 billion in spending spread out over 30 years. But still, these are numbers that when Congress starts to look into this plan, they're going to see that. They're going to see some, pretty expensive plans here. And they're going to see closing facilities, moving facilities. That's going to be hard for a lot of them to swallow.
Let's focus on that gigantic $2 trillion number. And for reference, according to the Federal Reserve, all the outstanding student debt in the United States is $1.73 trillion. That's a huge, huge number. That's even more than all the student debt combined. How realistic is it for the VA to get that money?
Well, look, this is parsed out a couple of different ways here. The VA is saying just their regular spending, just what they go into over the next 30 years. Again, this isn't 1 year, but it's over 3 decades. They're saying it would be about $1.8 trillion just to keep maintaining the VA hospitals. VA medical centers are a big business. It is the largest health system in America right now. So we're talking over 1,500 different locations. They need to get staff. They need to get upgrades. They need to get new equipment. So all of this costs money. And what VA is saying is rather than just dump that money in, let's invest a little bit more and get upgraded facilities. Let's move facilities to areas where more veterans will be able to access care. More veterans will have access to things like specialty care and mental health care. But you're right, those numbers are just so big to talk about. There's going to be quite a few lawmakers who say, we can't even have this conversation. We can't be talking about tens of billions or trillions of dollars when we're not sure if there's waste and inefficiencies within the department.
And your reporting showed that they want different infrastructure to serve the veteran community of the future. I mean, walking into a clinic, walking into a hospital, what's that different infrastructure going to look like?
Yeah, so some of the areas that'll have major medical centers closed down, we'll have them replaced with smaller community centers, maybe spread in different areas of town. So you won't have as many options there. You might not have full, operating rooms or full suite of services, but you will have quicker access. Maybe instead of having one big building in the middle of town, you'll have 5 buildings spread around town. Maybe there'll be one big building 2 towns over, and you'll have to drive to that. VA is saying if all of these changes are implemented, about 200,000 veterans will be within 200,000 more veterans will be within a half an hour of primary care, and about 300,000 will be within an hour of specialty care. So that's a pretty dramatic improvement. The question is whether or not that's worth the amount of money it'll cost.
Have you heard from the veterans community? Are veterans groups saying anything, for it or against it?
Well, look, these are just recommendations right now. So the veterans community is parsing through it and really looking closely at what comes next. There's going to be an independent commission that goes into these details over the next year, makes their own recommendations based off of them. And then both the White House and Congress will have a chance to vote this up or down about this time next year. So there's still a lot of work to be done. A lot of those veterans groups right now are holding back on their criticism and waiting for those public hearings to come from the independent commission so they can really start to dig into what's going to work, what's not going to work. But especially for communities that are losing facilities and losing major hospitals, they're already gearing up for a fight. I've heard from a lot of folks who are in places like Buffalo, South Dakota is slated to lose 2 VA medical centers. Those folks are starting to mobilize already to put up a fight against losing their facilities and trying to make a case for why they should stay.
And we'll see how the recommendations change as they go up the chain. Leo, thank you so much. We always appreciate having you on.
I appreciate it, and I'll be tracking it all year.
You can find that coverage on militarytimes.com.
That's it from around the military this week. When we come back, more on one of the weapons being used in the war in Ukraine, a Turkish drone. Welcome back. In this week's Actionable Intelligence, we look at more of the weapons being deployed in the battle for Ukraine, a Turkish drone system made by Bayraktar.
Bayraktar's TB2 Bayraktar drone has gotten a lot of attention in Ukraine's fight against Russia. You may have seen video online of it blowing up Russian tanks and anti-aircraft assets, among other targets. Right now I'm joined by Tayfun Ozberg, who covers Bayraktar, the Turkish drone maker. Tayfun, welcome to Defense News Weekly.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you for your kind invitation. It's a privilege for me.
Thank you. Bayraktar's TB2 Bayraktar has been getting a lot of attention in Ukraine, where it is said through open source intelligence and even reports from classified sources that it has taken out several Russian targets, that is, anti-aircraft weapons and even tanks. Not a lot of people had heard about the TB2 before this, but certainly you have. Tell us a little bit about this aircraft and why it's seeing the successes it is on the battlefield.
Yes, the performance of the drone was a matter of curiosity before this war between Russia and Ukraine. TB2 is a combat-proven drone. This is the most important feature of any weapon system. Was tested roughly 4 times in real conflicts in Syria, Libya, and most recently Karabakh. And this is the 4th real battle environment for TB2. Another important aspect of TB2 is it's very cost-efficient drone. For example, you can buy roughly 20 or 25 TB2 drones with a price of just 1 Reaper drone. Another important feature is modularity, I can say. Even if an airport would be destroyed where you want to take off the TB2 drones, you can make it ready to fly from somewhere else, for example, from a highway, in just 15 or 20 minutes. I should also mention the artificial intelligence features of TB2. AI affects the performance of the drone very positively. It's powered with deep learning algorithms, and this enhances drone's capabilities in every mission it attended. TB2 is also resistant to electronic warfare attacks. and it has anti-jamming and anti-spoofing capabilities and capable to fly in a GPS-free environment for a while. Even it loses the signal of GPS, it can continue its mission for a while.
And you mentioned the Reaper drone. I've seen the TB2 on a runway, in pictures. It seems a lot smaller than I would have expected it.
Yes, very smaller.
And what about the armaments? Are all of them armed, or are some of them used for reconnaissance? And the ones that are armed, what kind of armaments do they usually have?
Yes, we also should mention the smart munition it carries. The MEM family smart munitions manufactured by the Turkish Roketsan company helps TB2 to hit the target with pinpoint accuracy. It hit even moving targets with fast speed many times. There are so many videos on the internet of the vehicles or main battle tanks TB2 destroyed. It has options to engage targets from 15 to 30 kilometers range with different versions of MEM munitions.
I understand there's a TB3 on the way. Can you tell me a little bit about what's on the horizon with Baykar?
Yes, Baykar is currently working on an enhanced version of TB2. Its name is TB3. It's a shipborne version of TB2. It has a wider wingspan and a stronger engine to help the drone fly from naval assets. TB3 will be operated on Turkey's prospective landing helicopter dock named TCG Anadolu. And TB3 is also will have folding wings to be housed in the hangars of the ship. It will be more portable. According to the latest reports from the Turkish government and the Baykar company, they are planning to make the maiden flight within this year. And its integration to TCG Anadolu will be complete by the end of 2022.
I also understand that Baykar is also working on an unmanned jet fighter. Tell us about that.
Yes, Baykar recently released the photos of their unmanned fighter on the production line. Its name is Mius. It's the prestige project of Baykar. The company officials says that it's their dream project, and they began the conceptual work of the project in 2013. It will have air-to-air fighting capability and will fly at the speed of 0.8 max speed, and it will have an operational radius about 500 nautical miles, and it have a payload of 1,500 kilograms.
Well, Typhoon, thank you very much. There's a lot of news coming out of the Turkish defense industry, and our correspondents cover it every step of the way. You can follow it all on defensenews.com. And now for defense dollars. Germany will buy up to 35 of the US-made F-35 fighter jet, reversing years-long plans that saw the fifth-generation warplane eliminated from consideration. The planes will take over by 2030 the niche but crucial nuclear weapons mission from the aging fleet of Tornado aircraft. That announcement came from Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht during a joint statement with German Air Force Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Ingo Gerhardt in Berlin on Monday. This comes after German Chancellor Olaf Scholz announced that the country will exceed spending required by NATO. The U.S. State Department approved the sale of up to 8 Sikorsky AIM-860 Romeo multi-mission helicopters, and that deal would be to Spain and would be potentially worth $950 million. The sale would also include a range of weapons and systems, including Hellfire air-to-surface missiles, and also systems to enable surface warfare, anti-submarine warfare, and electronic warfare by these ship-based helicopters. The State Department said in an announcement that in addition to its reconnaissance uses, it could also be used for communications relay and search and rescue, and it will bolster the Spanish Navy's ability to support NATO missions. Previously, Spain had flown the older SH-60 Bravo Seahawk model. The Romeo model is living up to its name and has its share of admirers. Customers include the United States, Denmark, Australia, Saudi Arabia, Greece, South Korea, and India. And that's it for industry news this week. When we come back, it's time to look at building and rebuilding credit with our personal finance expert.
Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack talks you through how to build or rebuild your credit.
A positive credit history provides lasting benefits for your personal finances. Having and keeping healthy credit makes it easier and cheaper for you to borrow money. But you may be wondering, what happens if you don't have very much credit or none at all? Good credit isn't built overnight, but you can start now on some easy habits that'll get you on the road to credit success. One of the most important ways to build credit is to always pay your bill on time. That's what gives you credibility with lenders. So once you get a loan or a credit card, it's best to set up reminders or use autopay to keep those payments timely. Also, you should keep your loan balances low. Try not to exceed 30% of your available credit. This shows you're credit worthy. And while it's good to have different types of credit on your report, be careful you don't have too many. Having lots of credit cards or loans or frequently applying for credit can negatively affect your score. Keep track of these things on your credit report and your score at least yearly, and do help yourself by creating a budget and sticking to it. You always have to know where your money's going to successfully manage your cash flow and your debt. Once you become a credit card holder or take out a loan, you're the master of your credit destiny. But no worries. These tips will help you win at your financial life.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. In the meantime, head over to Army, Navy, Air Force, and MarineCorpsTimes.com and DefenseNews.com for more coverage from around the military and the defense industry. And if you're looking for stories to be delivered to your inbox each morning, subscribe to our Early Bird Brief. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the socials. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine started, several types of weapons have quickly come to define the conflict, both in the Russian offense and the determined Ukrainian defense. Todd South takes us through the details of some of those systems in this week's MilTech.
There's been a lot of talk in recent weeks about the ability of the Ukrainian military to slow or even stall Russian progress for its invasion. Experts have shared a range of factors for why the Russian military has run into problems. But when the rubber, or track, meets the road, a good bit of Ukrainian success has been their ability to use small, portable missile systems to strike lumbering columns of Russian vehicles. Ukrainians have been using the following systems according to media reports. The FGM-148 Javelin, a US-built shoulder-fired weapon that can reach out to about 2,500 meters with a self-guided targeting system that uses infrared homing. The warhead is designed to punch through tank armor, which makes it effective against most, if not all, of Russian vehicles rolling into Ukraine. They're also using the next-generation light anti-tank weapon, or NLAW. You might remember the LAW rocket from such 80s classic action films like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Commando. It can hit targets between 600 and 800 meters and also has a self-guidance and line-of-sight firing system. But the Javelin weighs in about 50 pounds, while the NG Law comes in about under 30 pounds. Both are manageable by a single soldier. The United States delivered about 300 Javelins to the Ukrainian government in January, according to news reports. That delivery spiked significantly when, according to the Washington Post, a combined US and NATO shipment sent 17,000 anti-tank weapons, many of them Javelins, just this past month. That's a lot of missiles roaming the Ukrainian countryside. And technically, that's almost 2 Javelins for every tank that Russia has in its entire military, which is about 10,000 tanks. However, most of those will likely be used on other armored vehicles or even unarmored vehicles carrying infantry or other fighters. But the capacity could be strained. That's because experts put the cost of a Javelin at between $80,000 to $200,000 per warhead, and most US manufacturers can build at most about $6,500 a year under current conditions. As of this past week, Ukrainian officials claim that they have destroyed 335 Russian tanks and more than 1,100 armored vehicles, although those numbers can't be officially verified. The Javelin locks into a vehicle's thermal signature, so it's nearly a fire and forget type of weapon once the shooter sends the round. It's also able to do a top-down attack, basically hitting the less armored top part of the tank, creating more of an impact where it's thinly armored when it strikes. There are a couple of homegrown Ukrainian rocket systems that are being used as well, although they're a bit heavier, and at least one of them requires 2 soldiers, complete with a tripod system to use. The first is the lighter system, the RK-3 Corsair. It weighs in about under 60 pounds, it can strike with a laser-guided system out to about 2,500 meters, and also uses a tandem hollow charge similar to the Javelin. Lastly is the Stugna P, which has the farthest range of all these rocket systems to about 5,500 meters, and also has a laser-guided system, the tandem hollow charge, and also a high-explosive fragmentation round. The key benefit to all 4 shoulder-fired or tripod-mounted systems is these are easy to operate. With minimal training, a soldier or civilian even can quickly join the fight and be shown how to use these, pick these up, point them at a target, and fire, and then get the heck out of there. That's because, from what we've seen so far, Russians don't spend a lot of time determining a specific target. Instead, they begin launching their barrages in the direction of the incoming fire. And the Russian military has a lot of firepower at its fingertips. U.S. intelligence officials estimate that there are about 120 battalion tactical groups inside of Ukraine as of this week from the Russian military. The BTG is a smaller version of the U.S. Brigade Combat Team. They use a combined assets of infantry, artillery, and air defense. Experts who track Russian military strength have said about 3/4 of the entire Russian military's BTGs are in Ukraine right now. The BTG typically has 3 infantry companies, a tank company with 10 tanks, another 2 companies of wheeled BTRs or personnel carriers, and a company of 10 BMP tracked infantry fighting vehicles. Russians use 4 main battle tanks, all armed with 125mm cannons. That weapon's range hits out anywhere to between 1 and 5 kilometers depending on the variant. The tracked infantry fighting vehicles carrying soldiers to the fight also brings with them a 30mm cannon and some even with a 100mm cannon. The BMP-1 carries an anti-tank guided missile system. Russians have 4 infantry fighting vehicle variants. The armored personnel carriers, or BTRs, also bring infantry to the fight and have their own weapon systems, a bit smaller but very effective, the 14.5, 12.7, and 30mm cannons with their machine guns. They can strike targets between 1 kilometer or as far as 4 kilometers, again depending on the vehicle variant. And then there's artillery and rockets. The Russian military is a fire-based fighting force. They like to lob a lot of lead downrange and bring plenty to the fight to do exactly that. Russian forces have 4 different self-propelled artillery pieces that all use a 152mm artillery round and hit areas between 20 and 80 kilometers. Like the United States, Russians still have towed artillery with variants between 120mm and 152mm. Those have ranges slightly shorter than the 12 to 30 kilometer distance. Their rocket systems pack a larger and farther reaching punch. The 5 different systems in the Russian arsenal tote rounds from the 120mm up to 300mm and land between 35 kilometers, clear out to 90 kilometers. This allows forces much like the US to keep their fires at a safe distance, usually protected, and then rain down a firestorm of munitions on a target. Keeping those systems on target is the duty of at least 3 different drone variants, the Aileron 3, the 4-post, and the Orlan 10. Those have 16 to 18-hour loitering capabilities, so they can just hover over a target or move around the battlefield. Some simply gather data and spot targets, others are armed themselves and can strike. Some may have seen footage of air attacks at close range. Those involve Russian attack helicopters such as the Mi-24 or 35 variant and the Mi-28. Similar in capabilities to the Apache attack helicopter, they also have rockets, IR missiles, air-to-ground missiles, and a 30mm cannon to boot. It's important to remember that time and again, even less sophisticated systems such as cheap, expendable, and easy-to-use rocket-propelled grenades have thwarted the United States in less than well-armored vehicles. Ukrainian weapons used so far are specialized to take out ground vehicles and armor, which is appropriate for how they're being employed against the Russian military. Some have called for delivering man-portable air defense systems or man-pads, such as the Stinger, and have those sent to the Ukrainians. They are similarly easy to use compared with more complex weaponry and geared to take out helicopters, planes, and drones. Most man-pads can hit aircraft up to about 3 miles away. The United States supplied enough man-pads, specifically Stingers, to Afghan fighters in the 1980s to counter the Soviet occupation in that country. In a 3-year period, Afghans were able to take out an estimated 269 Soviet aircraft, mostly helicopters. The Soviet Union did its own man-pad exports, sending shipments to Libya in the 1980s, some of which were then shared with terrorist organizations. Official data estimates show that several thousand man-pads are currently outside of state control. This presents a vexing problem for military and civilian aircraft. Following the 2003 US-led Iraq invasion, as many as 4,000 man-pads were determined to be missing from Iraqi military stocks, according to the Arms Control Association 2013 report. So that's been an overview of both the Russian and Ukrainian weapon systems employed in this conflict and concerns about proliferation beyond Ukraine. We'll continue tracking this story. This has been Todd South of Military Times.
And that's all we have time for this week. Please visit us on militarytimes.com and defensenews.com for more coverage. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.